So one of the things you need to know about Pate State here is when officiating goes off the rails, we're really sourced up when it comes to officials. A mind-boggling amount of college football officials watch the show. We're in contact with them. I talk to them every Saturday. So, as you may or may not have noticed, but probably did yesterday, officiating was an unmitigated disaster in many big games. Do I have things to say about that? Yes, I do. It is Sunday night. It is September 21st, the year of our Lord 2025. Jam-packed, high atop, just spectacular downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Full reaction Sunday. Clemson has imploded. Clemson has fallen. Miami has risen. Indiana, I don't even know why I resisted Curt Cignetti. I don't know why I've done it for so long, but no more. No more resistance. I will blindly follow wherever he leads from now on. The AP poll, kind of taking a back seat to being broken on the scale of brokenness relative to officiating. But yeah, I've got some odds and ends. I got some bones to pick with the AP poll as well. But I also have some best bets. Ramen Noodle Express, back above 500. We are back amongst the winning. Not that we were ever amongst the losing. We were just at 500 for a little while. We didn't want that. So we got that. I've got a big-time tour announcement. Dare I say, Jesse, tour announcements. We'll see how it goes. We got like 15 or 20 minutes to change our minds. We'll see. They're watching us in Roanoke, Virginia, Las Vegas, Nevada, Knoxville, Tennessee, Laredo, Texas. I chugged an entire cup of coffee right before we came on air. That's where I went, Bradley. That's what had you worried that we weren't going to start the show on time. So during the A segment here, energy should pick up substantially. I don't know what more to tell you. If you're not watching or you're not following on Instagram, yesterday's Instagram story was about as lively as any that I can remember. We were at the Nebraska game. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but just a lot of the stuff I can show you there that I don't have time to show you on the show, you got to be following there to see it, at Josh Pate, CFB. And if you don't care about that, then you don't need to follow. That's okay, too. But, man, we got a loaded show, jam-packed show, suspiciously jam-packed, I would say. So let's dive into it. Where would you start the show tonight? It's the kind of show where 3 or 4 games could have been the first one we talked about. But for me, nope. For me, I knew where I was starting. Syracuse 34, Clemson 21, two Chalai on the 1 to 5 scale of viewability here. There was a rain delay. Seems everyone's getting in on the rain delay action these days. Has Miami even played a game without rain? So Clemson gets rain delayed, but it did not delay the inevitable. We made Syracuse the first bet we placed last week on the show. You remember a week ago tonight. We bet Syracuse. I was just dumbfounded that they were getting 17.5 because we thought that Steve Angeli was the better quarterback in the game. And elsewhere, we just trusted Fran Brown. I mean, it's that simple. Some were worried throughout the week that Dabo's press conference and his statements were going to fire that team up. It was going to provide a spark. And I didn't say this on the show, but I said it off the air, which I should get credit for in retrospect. I said, what spark? What are you going to spark? There's no unknown. There's no unknown about the team. Everything's known. It's a known commodity. I won't go as far as to say it's a proven commodity. Clemson is a known commodity. All these players returned. There's no mystery. There's no we know there's no transfer portal infusion here. In fact, one of the few dips into the portal you made, it's actually one of the few bright spots on the team. But there's no big portal infusion we're waiting for the magic click moment on. There aren't a bunch of true freshmen all over the place. So I always thought that was a little dumb last week. I didn't think Dabo was talking to his team. I thought he was talking to, I don't know, maybe some of the sweater vests around Clemson that have gotten a little too used to winning. You would call those boosters. And it needed to remind them how great he was. Dabo's very good at that. Now, I'm not taking shot. I'm taking a little bit of a shot at Dabo there, but it's all in good fun because I love Dabo Swinney. But it's not a good time at Clemson. So let's talk about this, but we talk about winners first. So Syracuse firmly believed on this show, at least, that they had the better quarterback. And Steve Angeli, if you watched this game yesterday, surgical. Unfortunately, actually will have to undergo surgery. He tore his Achilles in this game. He is out for the year. The school confirmed that today. That's terrible. And I'm not saying anyone ever wants to get hurt. But, man, if you're going to get hurt, that right there, you want that to be the last page last chapter of your season's book because he torched Clemson. And they looked like they wanted it more at Syracuse. They played harder. They were more prepared. I had Clemson players, former Clemson players, texting me this throughout the game, like, look how more prepared they are than us. And just full disclosure here, these are people who would ride to the ends of the earth for that Tiger Paw and for Dabo Swinney. But they were just stating the obvious. A team, yet again, came into Clemson's building and just pushed them around. And we're not talking about vintage Alabama. We're not talking about Kirby's Georgia and Ryan Day's Ohio State. We're talking about Louisville last year. We're talking about an LSU team with a slightly hobbled quarterback to start the season. And we're talking about Syracuse. So, we good, Bradley? I just want to make sure before I continue to talk. Yeah, we are good. Okay. I don't care that they know I'm wearing joggers, so that's fine with me. You can take the lower thirds away. But, man, this happened again. All too often. Dabo last week said, why are we held to a different standard? You remember this? Dabo said, why are we held to a different standard than teams that haven't done anything, teams that have done nothing, to use his exact words? Well, because you've done something, and you set the standard there. And now Clemson's fallen well short of it. Not just this season, but it's been a little while. This has been a pretty familiar theme. The biggest dagger to the chest when it comes to Clemson is not only how frequently now people are just coming into your own building and pushing you around. Louisville came in there and did whatever they wanted last year. Syracuse came in there, did whatever they wanted yesterday. But it's that FSU imploded last year. We've got case study after case study of teams imploding and not coming close to fulfilling on preseason expectation. Oh, yeah, Florida State did it last year. Here's what the dagger to the chest is if you're a Clemson fan. You know as well as I do that Florida State team was thrown together from the portal. This Clemson team is completely homegrown. This is a completely homegrown, veteran leadership, returning starters all over the place, multi-year coaching staff continuity type Clemson team. And it's not quite dead on arrival, but it's pretty close. In fact, as the Clemson standard goes, which contrary to what Dabo says, I do have for them, much higher than most teams. As that thing goes, as the Clemson standard goes, it's dead on arrival. And I don't know that there's any skill in predicting how this is going to go. I was talking to someone pretty in touch with that program earlier today. They weren't trashing Dabo Swinney. I'm never going to trash Dabo Swinney. They weren't doing anything like that. A lot of people will do that because, frankly, the guy's a winner and he's won a whole lot, and there's a lot of pent-up frustration. There are a lot of shots that people have wanted to take at him for a long time that they only just now get to take. So I get all that. I'm not going to traffic in it. What I will say is I don't think there's any skill in trying to predict how this goes. What I mean is this season's probably going to be a wash. Forget the season for a second. The Dabo-Clemson era. We're in the middle of it still, so it's 2025. So pretend it's 2045. I assume he's not at Clemson anymore. But when we're looking back in 2045 at the year 2025, what are the 2045 versions of us saying? Are we saying, man, we didn't quite know it yet, but that was his last season there? Or are we saying, we didn't quite know it yet, but that was the beginning of a multi-year slide down a slippery slope that led to all kinds of turmoil and unrest and uneasiness and a bitter dispute that led to a bitter divorce 2 years later? Or are we saying, can you believe how dead in the water Clemson looked in 2025, and then Dabo just completely reinvented himself and pulled the nose up, and they won the title in 2027 and went to the semifinal again the next 2 years? Any of these things to me are on the table. I don't know. I will tell you what I haven't seen him do. I wrote down some terms that came out of his mouth 10 years ago. Some of you will remember his famous bell curve analogy as it related to college football. Reinvent, reinvest, reset, learn, and grow. I'm not saying he's forgotten it. I'm saying I don't see a whole lot of it around there. And it's mandatory. It's just as mandatory now as it was then. Dabo Swinney, once ahead of curves in college football, once ahead of the wave, then riding the wave, has now had the wave hit him in the face. And he's got salt water in his eyes, and he's struggling to clear his nostrils out, and there's another one coming. That's the way this works. The moment you're sitting still in the ocean, you're getting battered, and he's sitting still in the ocean. Clemson's just sitting still in the ocean, and they're getting battered. So I give all the credit in the world to Fran Brown, because I'm telling you, if they played another team like that yesterday, Clemson would have out-talented them, and they would have won. So you give all the credit in the world to the visiting team that came in there, scores, onside kick. I think Clemson was down 10-0 before they ever even touched the ball. So credit to Fran Brown. And there's some jobs that are about to open up. This is the part Syracuse folks don't want to listen to. Although you got to be realistic, man. When your coach is this good, he's going to be in the conversation. But there are going to be some jobs that open up. You know how every time there's a coaching search, there are some names out there that are prominent. And it's just agents doing a good job, basically. Search firms doing a good job. There are some names that are prominent. Then there are other names that seem like common sense. Fran, Kurt Signetti. But there's this voice in the back of your head. And your administration feels the same way. There's this voice in the back of their head that says, yeah, but I don't know. Why don't you know? Why don't you know about Fran Brown? What do you need to know about Fran Brown? He's up there in he's up in rural New York. He's up in upstate New York, and just taking Clemson to the woodshed. And not in whatever the Carrier Dome's called now. Not in that place. No, in Death Valley, the building formerly known as Death Valley now. Now it's just a pretty welcoming environment for inferior rosters, because not even Fran Brown's going to sit here and tell you, yeah, manpower, man for man, I got equal athletes to them. No, he's just got a better football team. Got a better football team. And unlike some of these results where I look at it and say, that seems just a little bit flukish. I bet if that game were to have happened tomorrow, so-and-so would be favored. This is just not one of them. And truthfully, I didn't even feel that way going into the game. I loved Syracuse. 17.5-point dog. And we were talking about it on the show last week. If you were following me on Twitter, I said in the middle of the game, I cannot believe they were given that many points with the better quarterback. I didn't know they'd have the more prepared team. That would have been helpful context. But, yeah, so we did cash in on Syracuse yesterday. I don't know where it goes from here with Clemson. But those words, reinvent, reinvest, reset, learn, and grow, does anyone feel like that's the modus operandi at Clemson right now? I'm not saying they're just mailing it in to cash checks over there. I know a lot of people in that building. I know a lot of people in that program. They're working just as hard as anyone else. They want it just as bad as anyone else. There's just a lot of staleness to that place relative to other places. I'll say that. There's just a lot. It just feels stale from the outside. I don't know. We weren't there yesterday. We were in Lincoln, Nebraska, which I'll tell you about in a little while. I'm very fortunate not to be more sunburned than I am. Had a great time up there, quick trip, fueling the Fall Don't Lie tour. And we went there yesterday. Prez is working on the all-access reel. We'll have that on the social channels in the next day or so. If you haven't been following there, by the way, I've been doing this every year. I figured, why not take one of the staffers and sort of capture a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff and put it together, add some nice royalty-free music as an audio bed, and just release it for the masses. So we've been doing that. But in the meantime, what I did want to do is I did want to take the time tonight to announce where we're going to go in week number 5. Now, if you have looked at the schedule, you know this may be the most loaded week of the season. I don't want to speak out of turn, but this may be the most loaded week of the season. The noon window has some monster games. The 3:30 window has some monster games. The night window of always has monster games. This is the week, by the way, that Oregon and Penn State and Alabama, Georgia kick off at the same time. This is the week that LSU goes to Ole Miss, which would have been slam dunk, like no debate, the biggest game of the day yesterday. And it's going to be undercard status at best. We've got so many big games. So, as you know these days, we are blessed with the opportunity to do multiple games in the same day. There's no way I'm not taking advantage of that this week. So we're going to do an early game. We're going to do a late game. The question is, well, how do we split it up? Well, I'll tell you how we're going to split it up. I've never seen USC play a football game in person. That drought ends this Saturday. I've never been to the University of Illinois. That drought ends this Saturday. We will begin our day in Champaign, Illinois. Cowherd's going to be there, I think he told me last week. So USC at Illinois. And then we will hop down to Athens, GA. Primetime kickoff. Alabama versus Georgia. Champaign, Athens, back to Nashville sometime later that night or early the next morning. Going to be a monster week. Wi-Fi on the plane has never been more mandatory than it is this week. I am looking so forward to this. Somewhere out there, one or two of our brothers are being dragged to a wedding this Saturday. And I want you to say, or I want you to know, don't say anything. It's too late to say anything. I want you to know you're in our thoughts, you're in our prayers, but this is your fault. I feel bad. You say you're having fall wedding problems. I feel bad for you, son. Finish it, Bradley. I can't do it. Finish it. Okay, let's continue. Oklahoma-Auburn was a disaster yesterday. Not the outcome. Hey, we picked Oklahoma to win and cover, and how in the world did we get that safety late? I'll never know. Well, that's the least of anyone's worries when it comes to this game. Proudly presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. We give this game 2.5 chali. For a close game, it was very, as Meemaw would say, herky-jerky. So, I know what everyone wants to talk about, and it's officiating. I feel you. As the future commissioner of this sport, I will clean this up, but I can't tonight. But what I can do is tell you, I acknowledge that officiating was an unmitigated disaster in this game, to the point where I am going to talk about it in its own segment later in the show. So if you're watching this individual video on YouTube, first off, please watch the entire show. But even if you don't, go back to the channel. You'll probably find an individual video just about officiating. That's how bad officiating was in this game. So I do want to talk about the game itself. I do have a padlock stat for the game, okay? Padlock stats, for those of you who are new around here, and there are tens of thousands of you who are new, welcome. Padlock stats is the kind of thing where if someone told me this on Friday, I think I would know how the game was going to go. So there were a combined 16 drives in this game of 15 yards or less. We call that under fuel in the betting world. There were 10 3-and-outs. We also call that under fuel in the betting world. But if you want the padlock stat as far as a team goes, I've got one for the University of Oklahoma. When you sack the opposing quarterback 10 times, things go pretty well for you. 14 tackles for loss. There are only 46 teams with that many sacks the entire season. Oklahoma, I want to repeat for those in the back, or for those driving around tomorrow morning, maybe you're driving a bus route, FedEx trucks, a little loud, you're at an intersection, you didn't quite hear what I said. Oklahoma had more sacks yesterday than, what was it, Jesse, like 100 and something teams, or 80 something teams have had, 90 teams have had all year. And that was a very, very not fun day for Jackson Arnold and his homecoming. This is an elite defense that Oklahoma has. I remember preseason, I was all excited about John Mateer, and I was saying, I think he's going to win the Heisman. I think Oklahoma, they could challenge for a playoff spot even with this tough schedule. They could challenge for a trip to Atlanta even with this tough schedule. And remember, I kept saying, I just need them conservatively to be a top 20 defense. Well, I've got that and then some. And that, I think, was on display for most of the world to see yesterday and in the Michigan game. But the other thing that I keep coming back to is even when John Mateer's stat line does not blow you away, he's a winner. I don't know how else to say it. He's just a winner. I used to feel this way about Jalen Hurts, who ended up getting benched in college football, but then came off the bench to win an SEC championship, went to Oklahoma and did big things. I'm told he won a Super Bowl last year, a little out of my purview. But I used to think when all else failed, when I was predicting a game with Bama or Oklahoma when Jalen Hurts was there, I just thought he was such a winner that a core part of my prediction is, dude, they've got Jalen Hurts on that team. It's hard to beat him. I kind of think that way about John Mateer. It's hard to beat John Mateer, to where if it's 52-48, 51-49 in my head, either way, that will put me over the fence to the other side. The quarterback profile in this game played out about like we expected it to. If you remember the preview video, this was always going to be an uphill battle for Jackson Arnold. I was never convinced that he was going to win this game running the ball. He beat Baylor running the ball. He was never going to beat Brent Venables. I didn't think Auburn was going to beat Brent Venables running the ball, and they didn't. I also didn't think we could trust him throwing the ball over the middle. And you know what? He ripped one over the middle yesterday, and I watched it, and I said, good for him, man. And then I watched one basically hit a defender in the neck a few plays later. I think it may have been the same drive, and I was like, oh, yeah, I remember now. But he had no time. This is not a Jackson Arnold loss at all. It's not a Jackson Arnold bash fest at all. The guy just had no time, but even when he did, I'm not going to completely just trash that offensive line, although Oklahoma did thoroughly enough yesterday. There were other times, dude, Jackson Arnold's just standing there. First read not open, frozen. And that's not surprising when you consider some of his issues last year, how hard it is to develop a quarterback period in this game right now. Unless you're, Kurt Cignetti, in which case whoever plays for you is just a star. Lane Kiffin, my starter's hurt. My backup's probably going to take my starter's job. Oh, by the way, he played at Ferris State last year. Those are the exceptions to the rule. The general rule is this is not supposed to be easy. Oklahoma limited the explosive plays, and everything else, aside from one or two, was either down around the line of scrimmage or it was a jump ball to an alien, Cam Coleman. That was Auburn's route. And you know what? They actually were in the game using that route. But it was never going to be conventional. It was never going to be pretty. There was never going to be really any rhythmic nature to the offensive effort. Auburn's profile is not that. Their quarterback profile is not that right now. Oklahoma got the job done. Again, I know a million different people have a million different takes about the officiating in this game. As I told you, and I'll tell you again, it is so bad. You're so right about it. I'm going to give it its own segment later in the show. But as for Oklahoma, man, they needed this so bad. Now, offensively, there are still concerns with this team. Mateer is their best rusher in big games right now. I'm not sure what the Jaden Ott experiment is or whether it's over or what's going to happen with that. I don't know. But their tailbacks are still under 3.5 yards per carry. I had an OU buddy that hit me up and said, hey, we lose this game the last few years. And you know what? Maybe that's all that needed to be said about last night. He's right. He's right. Last few years under Venables, in that kind of game, they'd find a way to lose it. He's right. And they didn't because they had the best player on the field. Happens to be their quarterback. Got some pretty darn good players on defense, too. It's going to be a gut check week for Auburn because this was the week where they went on the road to Oklahoma. Remember, Texas A&M's just sitting in College Station waiting for them. I think A&M was on a bye yesterday. And so not only is it a back-to-back road stretch for Auburn, they go play a rested team in their building, which, again, is ludicrous from a schedule-making perspective. But I don't do the schedules yet. When I do, we'll be okay, but I don't do them yet. Now, they're playing an A&M defense that seems to be more vulnerable than Oklahoma. You cannot let this loss bite you twice because they leave there feeling like they got robbed. That whether you agree with that or not, I guarantee you that's how they left their feeling. It's a terrible scheduling break. They're, I think, a 7.5-point dog, something around a touchdown on the road at A&M. It's a gut check time. It is not going to get any easier. I mean, they've still got Georgia coming up. They've still got Bama coming up. They've got all those games still coming up. So it's not going to get any easier. But congrats to Oklahoma. I do agree with my OU buddy. They would have lost that game last year. Now, those were the two they had to have. All right, so remember that wild prediction we had in the preseason where OU was going to be undefeated facing a 1 or 2 loss Texas team in the Red River Shootout, known by no other name on this show. Well, OU is going to be undefeated. Now we're going to find out about Texas. I think OU is going to be undefeated, I think. All right, let's continue. Let's talk about the game I was at yesterday. Bradley, I'm taking a sip of water right quick, even though I'm taking it out of a full jug. Thank you. Nope. I can't name who I want to thank for this because they haven't paid to be thanked on air. It's Publix, though. Michigan beat Nebraska. Allegedly, it was a close game, 30-27. It was not a close game. I give this game 3 Chalai on the 1 to 5 scale. There was a Hail Mary at halftime yesterday. So anytime you get that in a game, happened right in front of us. Anytime we can get that in a game, that's entertaining. It was close. It was a very, very raucous environment there at Memorial Stadium. This is their 28th straight loss versus a ranked team. Just not great. Here's some of the scenes that we took in yesterday. We were on the sideline all day. I can't keep doing this, guys. I can keep doing that. I can go on the road until the end of time. It's just that I've got something wrong with me. And in the interest of sharing intimate details of our personal lives with each other, I want to tell you, I got a Michigan problem in my life. I keep picking against them, and I don't know why. Some people say it's bias. I got nothing against Michigan. I was in Michigan's locker room after the win yesterday. I got nothing against Michigan, I promise you that. Could the model be anti-Michigan? Maybe, but I divorce myself from the model all the time. Famously, the model would pick Texas against the Chiefs if they played tomorrow. So the model's not the end-all be-all in my mind. But I keep looking at Michigan and this proven physicality, athletic profile that team has, even in a non-vintage year, playing against a team that hasn't proven anything, and I pick against them again. And they thoroughly proved me wrong again. And I'm left walking out of another building, shaking my head. You got to understand, a lot of folks at Michigan watch the show. I appreciate them. A lot of the coaches, a lot of the players. And I go in the locker room yesterday, and they just look at me, and some of them just shake their head. But others just ask, like, what's wrong? Why? How could you not see this coming? I don't know. I didn't even say anything back. What can I say? I don't know. I cannot believe the score was this close. Really. Look, all due respect to Nebraska and the immense respect for the program, Matt Rule, the fun we had. We were treated like royalty up there. Oh, I appreciate that until the end of time. But the play on the field yesterday has to stand on its own. And I cannot believe the play on the field dictated a score that was this close. They were trying to execute an onside kick, minute and a half left, and I was sitting there telling anyone who could listen, how are we even in a position with how thoroughly Michigan feels like they have steamrolled them, that this game's even still up in the air? And as it turned out, Michigan recovers, game over. But they were ripping off explosive runs left and right. It turns out if they just keep doing that, it's not an exception to the rule. See, I watched Michigan rip off explosive touchdown runs in a game, I think against like New Mexico. And then I remember saying, well, if they don't do that against Oklahoma, it's going to be a problem. Well, they did lose to Oklahoma, but even in that game, they ripped more off. And then they've done it every week since. And they did it yesterday. They had 7 carries in this game, not total, but 7 of their carries yielded 221 and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Their longest passing play was 16 yards. It didn't even matter. Underwood threw the ball because he, kind of felt like it every now and then. Didn't really even need to. And man, when he got in the open field, you remember when, I don't want to do this, I'm going to do it, whatever. There are no standards around here. You remember when Cam got to Auburn? They played LSU early in the year. And he pulled away from a guy named Patrick Peterson in LSU secondary. There were no Patrick Petersons, Peter I on the field yesterday for Nebraska. But the way Bryce Underwood hit that different gear when he got in open field reminded me of how it put my jaw on the ground when I first saw Cam Newton just turn it loose in the open field early in that 2010 season at Auburn. That is where I will end the comparison because that's not fair. But just a little moment in time versus moment in time. That's what I thought. It was a big-time competitive character sort of check from Michigan. And spoiler alert, they still got it. They go into the half tied. And there's some very, very questionable decision-making. Sharon Moore's not even there. So they don't even have their head coach there. Probably bit them when it came to game management, clock management. They give Nebraska an opportunity to call timeout with 1 second to go. Raiola heaves the ball to the end zone. Of course, it's not played right. It is played right by Nebraska. Touchdown, 17-all going into the half. Unbelievable. I mean, we went off the field. I was there with Will and Taylor and all the guys from Bussin' with the boys. We all go off the field up Nebraska's tunnel. Couldn't be more jacked. I was not around Michigan at the half. But I have since gotten several testimonials as to what was said over on the Michigan side, what the attitude was like over on the Michigan side. And the attitude was basically like, all right, let's hydrate up. Grab an Uncrustable if you want, strawberry, grape, I don't care. Just make sure you understand you just took a sledgehammer to their face for 2 quarters. If you do it for another 2 quarters, the result won't be in doubt. And they did, because sure enough, this is what good programs do. I didn't say team for a reason. This is a program thing with Michigan. It's a multi-year, it's an identity, it's a program thing. They come out, and Nebraska in the second half, 0 rushing yards. Michigan retakes the lead by 10, and they kept home field edge at bay. The stadium didn't really matter a whole lot in the second half. Not that it wasn't loud, it never really reached full throat because they never really had a reason to in the second half. And I don't know that people fully understand what kind of psychological toll that takes on the other side. When you have fought and you've crawled over broken glass to find a way somehow to tie that thing, and immediately it's a 2-possession game again in your home building in the second half. Yeah, it was trying to plug 13 holes with 10 fingers all day for Nebraska. And namely, at offensive tackle, they were powerless. It was just brute force. There's not really a play that you can run. To be honest with you, Dylan Raiola, I don't know where he found 308 passing yards, and that's even accounting for the Hail Mary. I don't remember 308 yards through the air, but he had 308 through the air. 30 of 41, 3 touchdowns and a pick, and they had 1.4 yards per carry, so they were not running the ball. Now, that is sack adjusted, but they were not running the ball effectively at all. I mean, Raiola, look, you can pick apart his performance if you want to. I don't know many quarterbacks that thrive in that kind of setting. His offensive tackles were in his lap all day. There were defenders meeting at his position on the field all day. I don't really know many people who are going to thrive in that environment. They're just not ready at the line of scrimmage, which I guess I should have been more aware of about Nebraska, I guess. I hoped, though. I did let a little hope creep in. In Shawshank Redemption, when Red says hope is a dangerous thing, he's wrong. But in college football, hope can be a dangerous thing. Hope can drive a man to pick very, very insane outcomes on games that he has no business picking. And I hoped my way into a corner, and then Michigan just stuffed me in the locker again. I hate it. I hate admitting it. But I do have a new strategy with Michigan, and that is to just ride with them until they prove me wrong by losing. Michigan needs to prove me wrong by losing. So I learned a valuable lesson again yesterday. Some people said, "Oh, you'll pick USC over us in a few weeks." I'll just leave the game out of the show if I think USC is going to win. I can't keep doing this to myself. I have got some very toxic Michigan people in my life that abuse me via text message and GIF, meme, and all that stuff after these games, and I can't do that to myself anymore. Honestly, going in the locker room was preferable to what my own friends, allegedly, said to me yesterday. The odds to win the Big Ten championship right now: Ohio State 1, Penn State 2, Oregon 3, USC 4, Michigan 5. And it should be noted there's a huge drop-off after Oregon. USC and Michigan basically have the same odds. Indiana is right there in that mix. So that's a picture in the Big Ten right now. Let's talk about our trip right quick to Lincoln. I've still got a lot of show to get to, so not going to spend a lot of time on this. Oh, we had a good time. Our friends at Fly House came through, as you can clearly see. If you're listening on podcast, just picture a machine bigger than we have any business being on. And our friends at Fly House came through big time for us. Carbs are of no concern on those kind of aircraft. And they got us up there, and we had a great time, and we were treated great. I have never been there before. Everything they said about Lincoln is true. Everything they said about the people was true. Really good access. Just had a great time. Met up with some of our old friends from CBS. Did some pregame work with them. We were everywhere. So I saw a good bit of that place. Think we saw a really, really charged game day environment. Didn't see a win, but beggars can't be choosers there. But the biggest blessing from our friends at Fly House is being back in Nashville by 9:30 that night. And that's without even being in a hurry. So it was an awesome trip. I am very hopeful to get up there again and to be able to see like one of those moments, one of those Berlin Wall type moments. And the only thing I can equate it to is like Tennessee. I was at Tennessee when they finally took down Alabama. And the feeling of euphoria and the feeling of just finally and the pouring out of emotion from an entire fan base. It's amazing. You rarely get to see that. But when you do get to see it, like if I'm ever at Nebraska and they take down Ohio State or they take down Michigan or someone like that, that would be an amazing sight. I can tell it would be. Boy, you want to talk about an amazing sight, though. There was one yesterday. Well, it was something. Miami just did some terrible, terrible things to Florida last night. 26-7 was the final, and that's with a touchdown that was basically called back just a sympathy whistle, if you will, from the officiating crew there for Florida, SEC officiating crew, mind you. I give this game 1.5 Chali, which is great news for Mario Cristobal because in his ideal world, his dream scenario is to play the most unwatchable game possible, just the ugliest game possible, because that's beautiful to a guy like him. I had a vivid flashback when I was watching this game, not to football. It reminded me of something. Any old school pro wrestling fans will know what I'm talking about. Have you ever heard of a concept called Brawl for All? Some of you know what I'm talking about. Let me explain it to you in like a minute. So back in the late 90s, pro wrestling is as hot as it's ever been. Naturally, somebody in the creative department said, hey, we should make them box each other. Pro wrestlers box each other for real on live TV. Why? Don't know. Let's just do it anyway. And no one shot the idea down. So they made up a tournament called the Brawl for All in the summer of 1998. I'm a very, very little kid, very formative years, so I think it's amazing. And so I've got guys that I've watched perform for me my whole childhood who are now boxing each other for real. And it was terrible. And half their talent roster got hurt, but there was one guy named Bart Gunn who turned out to be a pretty good boxer, turned out to be a phenomenal boxer by pro wrestler boxing standards. So he buzzsaws his way to the finals. And then he knocks out one of their big talents in the finals, and Bart Gunn is crowned champion of the tournament. Now, if that's where it ended, it would just be a bad story. It would just be a bad creative idea, and it's 25 years later, whatever. Unfortunately, that's not where it ended, because the bright minds in the front office got the idea that this guy looked so good boxing pro wrestlers, maybe we should wait till the next spring at WrestleMania and have him box an actual boxer. So they call Butterbean, and they have him show up in Philadelphia at WrestleMania 15. Now, Butterbean shows up to the event, as the legend has it, and actively asks the creative team, hey, what do you guys want me to do? Like, he's a real boxer, okay? So he can kill people if he wants to. So he shows up to a pro wrestling event, sure that he's being paid to perform. And they told him, no, we've got one of our guys is a good boxer. Oh, look at that. Look how chiseled he is. He's a good boxer. And Butterbean, in no uncertain terms, says, but you understand what's going to happen if I box him, right? Box him for real. And they're like, no. He's good. Trust us. He won our tournament. So there it is, WrestleMania 15, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. First pay-per-view my parents ever let me buy, by the way. And almost at the end of the first round, after a knockdown, Bart Gunn is knocked out. It was very ugly. It derailed his career, gave him a concussion, and he was never the same again. And the point is, I bet there were people in the back who were shocked when Bart Gunn got knocked out by Butterbean. Just like I bet there were people at Florida who really thought from a physical standpoint, they were about to go down to Miami last night. Maybe they don't win the game, but we will go toe-to-toe physically with Miami. They can't go toe-to-toe physically with Miami. Carson Beck really only needed to throw if he felt like it in this game. This, my friends, was your Sarah McLachlan special yesterday. Miami had 184 yards rushing, and Florida had 141 yards total. Florida, believe it or not a typo, kids, was 0 of 13 on third down. I have here, for the second week in a row, Florida's drive chart. 3 and out, punt, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, touchdown, turnover on downs, 3 and out, turnover on downs, turnover on downs. Florida had 32 yards in the first half. We counted every one of them. This is their worst start since 1986. Officials at one point took a Miami touchdown off the board basically because they blew what I can only describe as a sympathy whistle, where there was a mauling happening and there's a pile still moving forward, and some official just out of the kindness of their heart blows the whistle. Like, at the end of the day, these are someone's kids. These kids in the Florida uniform, like, that's someone's kid. I got to stop this. Well, no, it'll stop when he crosses the goal line. So anyway, if you think it was bad last night, it was. Florida only has Texas and Texas A&M and Georgia and Ole Miss and Tennessee and Florida State left, which, if you've got your trusty AP poll handy, means the numbers 10, 9, 5, 13, 15, and 8 teams in the country. For the second week in a row, an unprecedented first, redundant, on this show, Florida again, your Sarah McLachlan special. So, I got a sentence for you. And it has to do with Miami. Miami won a game defensively. Now, if you're new to college football, you may hear me say that sentence and think, big deal. Well, if you're new, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Boy, do I have some interesting footage to show you of Miami football last year. If you think it's no big deal for me to be able to say Miami won a game defensively, as Meemaw would say, Miami couldn't stop molasses in December last year. It was bad. Me and 10 of you could have moved the ball on Lance Guidry's defense last year. And now Corey Heatherman's in town, and an entirely reworked secondary is in town. And there's this thing named Reuben Bain. And then he's got a buddy, Mesidor, on the other side. And if you haven't watched it yet, words will not do it justice. Assault is really the only word I could use. But you just need to go watch it for yourself. Make sure there are no kids in the room. And then go watch this for yourself. You just remove so much variance when you can play like this. When you just impose your will on someone. Think about how little variance there is in the equation. If you know you've got a bigger, better offensive line and you can just lean on people, it's not a whole lot of risk in that. 46 carries for 184 yards and 3 touchdowns. Mind you, this is the best defense I think they'll see all year. So, and I'll speak on that in a second. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy the rest of the year. I'll speak on that in a second. And maybe Florida State's got something to say about that. But I think Florida's the best defense they'll see all year, and they folded them like a chair in the end yesterday. You just remove so much variance when you can play this way. So there's going to be a lot of hype around Miami. There is no getting around that. There already kind of was, and now there really will be, and there's going to be a lot of mystery around them too. They got the best odds to win the ACC by a fairly wide margin right now. I think it's the best team I've seen in college football this year. But 2 things. Firstly, they go to Tallahassee, Florida in 2 weeks. Somehow, this is a real sentence that's about to come out of my mouth. Somehow, some way, in the year 2025, the ACC has a team that is going to play 1 game in the next 20 days. Because Miami has a bye this week, then they play at Florida State, then they have another bye. Then they play the rest of their season. Don't even ask. Don't even ask. But anyway, there's going to be a lot of mystery. Keep the schedule up for me, Bradley. So they go to Florida State on October 4th. Going to be a massive game. Looks like it's going to be a top 10 matchup if Florida State gets by Virginia. And don't laugh because that's a single-digit spread. But if they get by them, that's a top 10 matchup. It's the most meaningful Miami-Florida State game in like a generation. After that, if you're listening on podcast, Louisville, Stanford, at SMU, Syracuse, NC State, at Virginia, at Pitt. I would venture to think Miami is either a double-digit favorite or close to it in every one of those games. At SMU is the only one I would possibly doubt there. If they stay healthy, they will be a big-time favorite in all those games. So who matches up? Nobody matches up. I don't know that anybody matches up with them, period, on the line of scrimmage, but that's not the question. Here's the problem. To me, the biggest challenge Miami will face is themselves. After that Florida State game, their biggest challenge is themselves, because here's what happens. You got an extremely talented team, the potential to be a dominant team, but it's a bunch of guys who have never been to the dance before. Hardly anyone associated with this program has been to the dance, and if they have, it's been with another program. Mario's never done it as a head coach. These coordinators have never done it as coordinators. Carson Beck has. Carson Beck's played at that level. A lot of these players haven't. Here's the problem. When you've never been great, you don't really have a proper scale in your mind to let you know how great you are and the standard and what it's supposed to look like. And when you play great competition every week, that's a moot point because you get to test yourself against it every week. They won't play great competition every week. So you got a group of folks who haven't been there before and hadn't done it before, and they'll be double-digit favorites every week. And what can happen is You can underachieve and still win. You can let bad habits creep in and still win. You can get lazy. You can get very, very careless with attention to detail. And really, your helmet's going to win a lot of those games. What it won't do is beat Ohio State or Georgia or whoever, Penn State, whoever's there, when and if you make the playoff. And what you end up having happen is you have this really, really weird outcome. You can have this really weird result. It's the cattle prod to your neck. And what you find is you were talented enough to win, but you didn't win. You got beat. And you got beat by someone who had razor-sharp attention to detail the whole year, maybe because their staff's just that good, or maybe because their schedule mandated that they have that all year, and you got loose down the stretch, and you never regained your form. That's the biggest threat to Miami, because they are the best team in that conference by a wide margin. They may be the best team in the country right now. They're the most capable team, I think, in the country. Doesn't guarantee a thing. Does not guarantee a thing. That's the best I can do, guys. Okay, I assume that this is it for Billy Napier. I assume that he will lose his job, which I hate because I love Billy Napier. But it is what it is. That's bottom line business, and he has not gotten the job done there. And Florida deserves better. They invest to the degree where they have the right to think they deserve better, and they're not getting it right now. This is going to be a major story. These jobs don't come open very often. We thought maybe it would happen last year. It didn't. I just don't think you avoid that trapdoor twice. So it sounds like an inevitability that this is going to happen. Now, the thing about that is, okay, when? And that you'll get 15 different answers on if you ask 15 different people. But we are in the modern age, the age where your roster can disintegrate if you fire a guy and then hire another guy, and then those guys don't like that guy. So it's a very, very different age. It's also the age where money is real and has to be treated as such. It used to be, what's his buyout? 20 million, 40 million. Oh, who cares? Well, you better care now. You got to treat that money like it should be treated, because it has to be treated as real. So you got to buy a guy out and buy a staff out and then go pay a new staff. And that's a lot of money. Now, maybe they want it bad enough, but that's a lot of money. So, yeah, I think that's going to happen. Unfortunately, well, it's fortunate if you want it to happen. I never wanted to see it happen. So, unfortunately for me, fortunately for Florida fans, I think it'll happen. Sorry, Bradley. Yeah, I'm done with that. College football officiating is a disaster. It's been broken for a while. I know more about Air Force One than I do the crew that officiated Tulane Ole Miss yesterday. There's no transparency in this whatsoever. It is the most unnecessarily guarded aspect of sports that I can think of. There's some aspects, like a player's medical history, you need to guard that closely. How enforcement happens to an officiating crew when they mess up a call in an SEC football game should not be hidden behind like a vault lock and key thrown in the ocean. It should never be like that. And it is. And to be honest, when you watch games like yesterday with Auburn, Oklahoma, when you watch what happened in that Miami versus Florida game, it may or may not, in your mind, change who won the game. You can never prove that. The whole butterfly effect theory. You can never prove that. But even if it doesn't, it borders on criminality to me. I'm not joking about that. When you think about the amount of money and the stakes that ride on these games, careers ride on these games, people placing bets on these games rides on this game. And to have the lack of transparency and the utter disaster that the enforcement mechanism is from a rules perspective in these games, sometimes it seems criminal. And the problem is, I've never been a big conspiracy theorist guy on this. Like, I think officiating's just really hard, and people are out there genuinely trying to do a good job, and sometimes they screw up. And maybe if you screw up too much, you don't deserve to be on that field anymore. But at the very least, I've always thought we ought to get way more answers on this, way more transparency than we do. And when you don't get it, that is feeding oxygen to conspiracy theorists. So, I got an Auburn buddy. Who swears the league office is out to get Auburn. Do I believe that? No, not per se. But his proof is Auburn getting the shaft from the officials in a football game yesterday. Now, I personally still don't look at that as this indisputable evidence that the league office has it in for Auburn. However, here's the problem. I don't have any counter. I don't know what to tell him because the league doesn't tell us anything. And every time you sit there and you hide behind these little Twitter PR graphic edits that you put out hours later, which mean nothing. No one cares that you admit you were wrong after you've already blown a game. Every time this happens, every time we go further down this road of lack of transparency, it provides oxygen to people like my buddy who believe that Birmingham, Alabama is home to the SEC league office who has it out for Auburn University. What am I supposed to tell him? You don't tell us anything. I have no clue what to tell him. So here's what happened yesterday. If you're unfamiliar with what happened, if you weren't watching the Auburn-Oklahoma game, Isaac Sategna, who is a really good receiver, really good portal addition for Oklahoma, of that I am happy. He used a hideout tactic, which is basically acting like you're going off the field, you're getting subbed out, and you just stop, and then you're still on the field, and then they throw a touchdown pass to him because, of course, no one's covering him. And so there were some people watching who knew nothing about the rules against that, and they thought, oh, that's really smart by Oklahoma. There were other people watching who knew, oh, that's illegal, but hey, if you can get away with it, get away with it. Whatever. I've never been about that life, but whatever. Then there is a third group of people who don't think a rule was broken, and then their world shattered when the SEC comes out after the game with a very, very quickly put together statement that, yeah, we screwed this up. And then I had some OU fans trying to still argue, no, there was nothing wrong with this. How can it be a substitution infraction when nobody subbed? How could it be against the rules when he got the thumbs up from the line judge? Because none of it matters. And I've been on the phone with officials all afternoon. I can promise you, none of it matters. You've got an entire subcategory of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties and the specific subcategories that deal with this stuff called unfair tactics. And that's why in that unfair tactics 9-2-3-7, whatever rule, that's why they say it doesn't even matter if players go on or off the field. It doesn't matter if a substitution actually happens. The germ of trying to fool someone on sub-tactics could very well be that you never intended anyone to come on the field in the first place. So it's very obvious a rule was broken here. And anyone who doesn't think so, the league disagrees with you, and they've got all the incentive in the world to not. So that happens. Here's what's wild. It's not wild that calls get blown every now and then. Here's what's wild. It's so much worse than you think it is. You would have your mind blown how many officials listen to this show and how many of them reach out all the time. And rarely do I walk into a building that a member of the officiating crew, sometimes even the white hat, doesn't come up to me and talk about something they've heard us say about officiating on the show and then feed us a little information. And to their credit, it's always in the interest of bettering their profession or holding their profession to account. Because contrary to popular belief, most of them are really good at what they do. But they look around and say, if the public had any idea how broken this process is, and if the public had any idea how much of a bind some of us are put in, above and beyond just the calls we make on the field, it would blow their mind. It would. It would blow your mind. So, college football, billion-dollar industry. Nickel and dime officiating enforcement arm. College football sits here and prints money. It's a billion-dollar industry, and it's got a nickel and dime officiating arm. And it's never made sense, but it only makes sense when you understand no one's really in charge. Oh, Josh, certainly they have superiors. Oh, no, they do. They do. You've got conference coordinators of officials. Who are they answering to? Steve Shaw? What transparency is he giving you? So really, as just an observer of college football, maybe even as a coach, what kind of transparency are you really getting? Here's what's wild. What's really wild is Hugh Freeze is sitting in his game yesterday, and just an egregious call goes against him. I kid you not, I have spoken to officials today that say that's day one clinic stuff. Like, even within their own world, it was the talk of yesterday about how egregious a no call that was and how much everyone should be fired or punished on the spot on that crew for allowing it to happen. Here's what's wild, though. Call gets blown, just an egregious miss by that crew in the Auburn-Oklahoma game. And then the SEC comes out afterwards and says, yeah, we messed it up. And that's it. And what's crazy is if Hugh Freeze goes to the podium afterwards and does nothing more than tell the truth about what a joke the process is right now of officiating and the lack of transparency, he'll get fined. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself yesterday, hold up. So Hugh Freeze's job is on the line, pending he win football games. You can make a call that may cost him a game, and all you got to do is say afterwards, oh, we missed it. Hands clean. If Hugh Freeze calls you out, he owes you tens of thousands of dollars. Here's my question. If your officials screw a game up and cost me a win, and you come out and admit you cost me, or at the very least you screwed up, why don't you owe me money? Why doesn't the SEC owe Auburn millions of dollars? Why doesn't, it was an SEC crew on the other game too, why doesn't the SEC owe Miami money? Why don't you have to come off your hip pocket when you screw up, when people actually do have to come off their hip pocket when they accurately call you out for screwing up? Well, that's because we've got to protect the sanctity of the brand, you see. We've got to maintain the clean image of this conference's shield. But no one actually cares about that. They care about the integrity of the game. You're screwing up the integrity, especially the competitive integrity of the game, when you're that bad at officiating it. That's what we care about. That's what fans care about. That's what coaches and players care about. No one cares about your logo but you. And yet that's where the focus is. That's also why we don't ever get to hear from officials. We don't even get a token pool reporter to go talk to officials most times in college football games. No, you'll just take our statements if we feel like one's required. Really, we don't even have to do that. And that's it. And that's all, because we really don't have to answer to anyone. There's no one overseeing this process. If there was transparency, people would realize how jacked up the process is, and we can't have that. We can't let people know how inconsistent the manual and mechanics emphasis is league to league. And by that, I mean they emphasize something totally different in the SEC than they do in the American, than they do in the Big 12, than they do in Conference USA. And you may think to yourself, but don't some of these officials in out-of-conference games officiate games featuring teams from other conferences? Yes. Yes. You're not supposed to know all that. You're not supposed to know how inconsistent that entire process is. You're not supposed to know they emphasize something in one league and they don't in the other league. You're not supposed to know that maybe certain procedures are encouraged in one league, especially for out-of-conference games, that may not even be encouraged for league games. You're not supposed to know any of that stuff. It kind of seems a little corrupt. You're not really supposed to know that. You're not supposed to know about agendas with crew placement or how conference coordinators of officials actually operate and how some of them like each other, how some of them hate each other, and how it's tough to elevate one ladder even though that means you got no shot on another ladder. You're not supposed to know that. You're not supposed to know that because this is college football. And we have to keep the veil of secrecy on something like officiating. Oh, but can you imagine? I mean, what kind of state secrets, what kind of national security risk it would be if fans of college football knew more about the officiating mechanism of college football. It's a joke. It is a joke. And it's a bigger mess, believe it or not, than you probably even think it is. And I know most of you guys think it's a mess, because I do too. Look, if you've ever worked in a standard American corporate environment, take all the problems you have in your workplace, and it's not too difficult to imagine what kind of problems exist in this world when there's lack of accountability and there are little pockets of power to be had, and it's really the only authority any of these people are ever going to have in life. It's not hard to imagine how it gets a little twisted behind the scenes. It just so happens that hundreds of millions of dollars are bet on this, and they're not bet on what happens in your office day to day. And careers are on the line, both coaches and players, when it comes to this. So a little more transparency, I don't think is the worst thing in the world to ask for. Nor is a discount when you want to buy tickets to go to games. I agree. So that's why I went to SeatGeek and I said, excuse me, hello? They opened the door, third knock, and I said, our people need some money back. And they said, okay, so here's the deal. If you're going to a game, and there are a bunch of them to go to this weekend, you want to go to Oxford this weekend, you want to see LSU in town, go to SeatGeek. There will be tickets available. It's not going to be the cheapest ticket in the world, people. It's a big game. But what I can do is I can get you 10% off of your order. Or if your order is more than $200, I'm just going to get you $20 off. You only need to use code PATE10. Pate, P-A-T-E, 10. That's it. There's no catch. You're going to buy the tickets. It's going to cost you some money. It always was. I'm just going to get you a little discount on the end. Pate10, P-A-T-E 10. I've got some added takeaways from yesterday. I know we're going to hear from folks, Jesse. Because, I mean, honestly, first off, my nose itches. Secondly, on one hand, I kind of said too much in that officiating segment, but I didn't. Because the process is a joke. And nobody in that industry can call it out because they're afraid of losing their job. Well, I couldn't care less what a conference thinks about me, what the league office thinks about me, or what a coordinator of league officiating thinks about me. So I'll call it out. I don't care about burning sources. They're not my sources. Those folks from the league office don't really hit me up. So I don't really care. So I'll call it out. Added takeaways from this weekend. Oh, Indiana. 63-10, huh? It was a splattering in Bloomington. In fact, Prez hit it. This was a TVMA special. We can't even keep the normal lighting in the studio. We just got to go blood red for this one. This is a different Indiana team. Pure TVMA special. 63-10. 579 to 161 was the yardage edge here. 312 to -2. Is that true, Jesse, or was it 320 to 2? Oh, Illinois did get 2. So they did keep it above 0 in the rushing statistics. I do have a drive chart for you. Again, women and children, probably leave the room for a second. No, you know what? Stay. You need to hear this because I don't want you to fall victim like I did. I picked Illinois. I don't want this to happen to anyone else. So the kids, it's time for us to have a talk, kids. Not that talk. No, this is about Indiana football and what they do to you. Frankly, whether you pick them or you don't. Punt, touchdown, punt. Touchdown, 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 end of game. Illinois had 7 3-and-outs. This was terrible. This was assault. I took off yesterday, and this was a 2-score game. I landed, and it was 63-10. It wasn't that long of a flight, guys. So this was bad. Indiana, you know, it's funny how that Big Ten schedule, okay, Perez, it's getting scary in here. It's funny how that schedule in the Big Ten's changing a little bit. You know, first off, their quarterback now is the favorite to win the Heisman. So Fernando Mendoza is now the favorite to win the Heisman. Look at that, Jesse. You see Oregon? Oregon is the favorite. They're the 4th favorite to win the Heisman right now. I'm a big believer when we have typos in the show, we just have to have fun with it. Because if we don't, the comment section will call us out. So they don't run. Or they don't chase if you don't run. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So the league schedule at the beginning of the year had people saying, Oregon, oh, they play Penn State. They got USC later. But, I mean, that's 10-2, 11-1. They don't really play anyone else. Yeah. If Indiana's coming to your building or you're going to their building, you are playing at least one other really, really legit opponent. So Indiana goes to Oregon. They go to Penn State later in the year. I didn't watch Indiana at any point last year and think that team is a danger if they make the playoffs. I thought they were a good, solid story. I thought Cignetti was a revelation as a head coach. I thought there was a very workable schedule where they could backdoor their way into the playoff, but they'll get buried if they face quality competition. And they did. I don't feel that way about this team. I legitimately think this team could do damage if they make the playoff. Now, they got a tougher schedule, but they got a better team. They got a better quarterback, I think. So that was a scary-looking team, man. That was a scary-looking performance. Texas Tech beat Utah 34-10. And the edge here, if Utah had one, remember, was supposed to be physicality. Now, we picked Texas Tech because I didn't think that edge was going to be there. And Texas Tech ended up hanging 24 in the 4th quarter with their backup quarterback. So this absolutely begins to separate the picture a little bit in the Big 12. Now, I'll tell you what's funny is the things that you thought about the Big 12. You know, top to bottom, it's so competitively balanced and anyone could win it. What if we start saying that about another conference this year? Maybe one of those Power 2s. And maybe there's separation. Because right now, Texas Tech is the solid odds favorite at FanDuel to win the league. TCU is number 2. Arizona State number 3. Iowa State number 4. I think you saw the best team in the league yesterday in Texas Tech. And I think they're only going to get better. It's a bunch of guys who were thrown together. And so they're just now playing together. They're just now getting their first few games under their belt. They go to Houston. They got a bye week. They go to Houston. They got Kansas. And then they go to Arizona State on October 18th. That's one I'm really looking forward to. Baron Morton, not expected to miss any time. Got a sore neck, I think, but they got a bye week quarterback there. He'll be good. Missouri, 29. South Carolina, 20. And yes, Lenora Sellers ends up playing this whole game and threw for 300 yards somehow. And you may think to yourself, I would think this. If I looked at that, I would say, oh, good for Lenoris. He's back. Yeah, well, that's not the padlock stat. The padlock stat is 285 to -9, because those were the rushing numbers, respectively, in this game. The winning team, of course, Missouri, running it for 285, holding South Carolina, non-sack adjusted, to -9 rushing yards. Missouri was 6 of 6 for 29 points in the red zone. And two guys, by the way, that, in fairness now, we did talk about both these guys in our portal sleepers. Ahmad Hardy, the tailback, I believe from Tulane, or UL Monroe, right, Jesse? 12 carries, 138 yards and a touchdown. And Josiah Trotter was a linebacker transfer, 11 tackles for loss yesterday. So they just keep quietly finding players there, and they lose players, and they lose coaches, and they just backfill them. Eli Drinkwitz, one of these days he could be a half-decent coach. Memphis, 32, Arkansas, 31. It can't be real. It can't be real. I watched this outcome yesterday live on the field in Nebraska in stunned disbelief. Some of you don't believe in curses. Some of you are not superstitious. I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious because I've watched Arkansas football. So I know something's got to be in play above and beyond just the forces of nature that we can explain. There's no way this amount of bad happens to good people if curses are not real. 18-point lead, topped 500 yards of total offense, and they lost. And they're inside the 10. I mean, you imagine me, they're down 1 point, they're inside the 10, minute to go, all their timeouts, where they're just going to center the ball up here, right? No, they're going to fumble it away. I mean, they didn't fumble it away against air. Memphis punched the ball out. So huge credit to Memphis, a huge play there. You never know what that's going to mean. That can mean the difference in them making or not making the playoff at the end of the year as the G5 team. Talon Green made some bad decisions in this game. Now, they got Notre Dame this Saturday. That's an 11 a.m. local time kickoff in Fayetteville. Dare I say wounded animal mode for both teams? Yes, I do dare say that. Ole Miss just throttled Tulane yesterday. Ole Miss slammed the door on any upset alert talk. We had some upset alert talk. How do you not? It's John Summerall. It's Tulane. You know good and well Ole Miss has got LSU the next week. It's a very, very high-level G5 team coming into your building. You lost to Kentucky last year in a similar spot. LSU, like I said, is on deck, and there's just never a doubt in this game. Now what we have is one of the most overrated terms in college football brewing in Oxford, and that is quarterback controversy. What's the controversy? They got two really good quarterbacks. One of them's been hurt, so the other one's come in. Austin Simmons been hurt. Trinidad Chambliss comes in. Just lighten it up, because that's what Lane Kiffin quarterbacks do. And I was told today that there's a quarterback controversy there. I asked, what is the controversy? And they said, well, Trinidad Chambliss is playing really good ball. Then there was a pause, and I was like, finish your sentence. There was like, no, that's the sentence. He's playing really good. What do you do with Austin Simmons when he comes back? And my answer was probably play the one that gives you the best chance to win. Are you telling me Lane has two guys he can win with? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. That's not a controversy. That's depth. That's not controversial. Having multiple winners, guys you can win with in your quarterback room, is not controversial. Having none you can win with is controversial. And just having to trot one out there every week, that's controversial. That's not fun. Lane gets paid plenty enough money to sweat the decision over which of his really good quarterbacks he's going to play. Also, it's nice to know you don't have to rush a guy back who's injured because his backup can win too. So, yeah, that's not a controversy to me. But this next thing could be. The AP poll is out. It's become our least favorite pastime, but one that we indulge in every Sunday night. We've got movement. It makes no sense. I don't know why. Let's just get right into it. So this is the updated AP poll. Brigham Young is ranked at 25, TCU at 24. Illinois is in this thing still. And last week, I made it a point to talk about Illinois and how they were too high and how they were top 10, even when like Georgia Tech and Vandy weren't. And Georgia Tech and Vandy clearly had better resumes than Illinois. But Illinois had been invited to the party preseason. Now, people misconstrued that. And they were like, Illinois is not a blue blood. They don't normally get benefit of the doubt. I know, I didn't say they did. I said they've been invited to the party this year because they have the most magical stat in a sports writer's mind, which is returning starters. They've got a bunch of returning starters. That must mean they're 30% better than they were last year, and they were pretty good last year. Bowl win, by the way. So let's put them in the top 15. And then they kept getting rewarded. And so they were top 10. And they lost yesterday by 500,000. They're still ranked. Not because they have a top 25 resume, but because, well, we dropped them 14 spots. Maybe you should start from scratch every week when you formulate your poll so that you should never have how far you're dropping a team in your mind. Just stack teams based on who has the best resume. Again, this is a bridge too far intellectually for most of the AP voters. Notre Dame's at 22. Okay, USC looked good last night. Looked really good. I mean, Lincoln Riley, I regret to inform you, has himself a really good quarterback in Jaden Mayava. They're up 4 spots to 21. I have a theory. I was working on this with some guys today. I think Jaden Mayava is better at quarterback for Lincoln Riley than Caleb Williams was. He may not be the most talented quarterback he's ever had, but he plays within the system. And I thought Caleb Williams played wildly out of it all the time. And so I don't have Lincoln Riley on the record having said this. I don't need it. I guarantee you he feels more comfortable with Mayava right now, who is rapidly progressing and playing within the system and throwing the ball where it's supposed to go and doing what he's supposed to do and reading what he's supposed to read, than a guy with all-world talent who just winged it. I'm not interested in that. I don't think he is either. Missouri is at 20. Miami's way higher than that. Michigan's at 19. Vandy is at 18. Vandy, again, obliterated someone yesterday. Vandy was favored by 28. They won by many, many more points than that. But because it's Vandy, you're going to have to win like 5 or 6 more big games, marquee opponents, before we crack the top 15 with you. Vandy clearly has a top 15 resume. It's such a joke they're not top 15. Bama's 17, whatever. Beat Wisconsin handedly. I'm okay with it. Georgia Tech should be way higher than 16. Again, just a complete joke of a process. Georgia Tech's resume, just think about what it has now. I guess they're being punished for Clemson losing again, which is understandable, but I ask you, how do you know that Georgia Tech beating Clemson initially didn't create a chain of events that led to them losing again? Like, why would Georgia Tech get punished for that? That's why I've always believed in baking the value of a win in as the win happens, and then rarely, if ever, revisiting the value of that game. But people disagree with me on that, so whatever. Tennessee's 15, Iowa State's 14, Ole Miss, I'd probably have higher than 13, but that's okay. Texas Tech's up 5 spots to 12. Indiana, look, I can't blame anyone for having Indiana this high. I will have Indiana top 10 this week in the commissioner's poll. I don't know how you look at them so far and think otherwise. They blasted Illinois yesterday, but people are just overlooking that Old Dominion game. Oh, that Old Dominion game wasn't a blowout. Old Dominion's a very good team, and it was week 1, and Indiana ended up winning. They didn't cover, but that's not supposed to matter, by the way, to an AP voter. Indiana's a top 10 team. You're not going to tell me they have a worse resume than Texas. There's just no way. There is no way that you look at the body of work Texas has, body of work Indiana has, and say, hook 'em. No way. Now, if you're trying to project with this, if you're trying to predict with this, if you're trying to do the whole who would be favored on a neutral field thing, that's not what this is for. That's what power ratings are for. I know because I do those every Tuesday night. And I will have Texas ahead of Indiana. Probably not by a whole lot, but I'll have them ahead of Indiana. They have no business being ahead of Indiana in a merit-based resume competition. And even if you think Texas is going to go on to do big things, wait till they do it. Wait till they do it. Because you also thought they'd be the number 1 team in the country. Most of you did. And now they're struggling to stay in the top 10. So what you think, respectfully, doesn't really matter. What I think doesn't matter. What I think will happen doesn't matter. This is, as far as I can tell, this is about what has happened, right? A&M's number 9. Yeah, that checks out. FSU, number 8. Okay. I don't, yeah, whatever. Oklahoma. I'm a little upset with Florida State because they beat our team yesterday, Kent State. We bet Kent State every week. And I don't mind Mike and the guys winning. Did you have to run it up like that? Yes, the answer is you did. Oklahoma's at 7. Yeah, no problem with it. I don't have a problem with the rest of them. Oregon's at 6, Georgia 5, LSU 4, Penn State 3, Miami's at 2, Ohio State's at 1. I will have Miami number 1 again this week. I think they're the best team that I've seen so far this year. However, if you are a believer that the previous year's national champ, if they're any good, deserves to hold on to number 1 until they lose, I can't argue with it. I've never thought that last year should be a basis for your resume this year. But if you think that, that's okay. You're splitting hairs there. But, yeah, as for where Georgia Tech is, where Vandy is, the fact that Illinois is still in this thing, I mean, guys, Illinois lost by over 100 yesterday. What are we doing right now? What in the world are we doing right now? Mississippi State is still unranked. What are we doing? Mississippi State is clearly one of the best 25 resumes in college football right now. But you know what their great crime is? You know what they did wrong? They woke up in Starkville, Mississippi Saturday morning. They woke up with that, hopefully the interlocking MSU on their chest. That's their great crime. That Vanderbilt's great crime is being Vanderbilt. That's the great crime. So I don't know, you should have just woken up Texas Saturday. Maybe you could have gotten benefit of the doubt. You can go over to FanDuel right now, and you can look at odds to win these conferences because they are moving very, very quickly. We showed you the odds to win the Big 12 has moved. Texas Tech's now the favorite. Ramen Noodle Express, if you want to bet those games, we have our own tab, by the way, at FanDuel, which we went 6-4 this week. Another winning week. If you're a new customer there, use that QR code on the screen right now. If you're listening on podcast or you don't trust QR codes, and Jesse put that together, so who knows? Maybe you can't trust it. You can go to FanDuel.com/Josh Pate and get the same entry point. That lets them know we sent you. Bet $5 on anything. If it hits, you get $300 in bonus bets. Just a little thank you as a new sign up there. That's very helpful this time of year. $300 in bonus bets. You never know, by the way. One $300 wager or even $5 wager on the right thing could change one's life. I happen to know someone who cashed over $24,000 on a parlay last week. And that's not a word that we regularly use on the show. It's not a behavior that we participate in regularly. But, man, he hit it, so good for him. As for us, I've got 2 games to add to the Ramen Noodle Express for this week. We went 6-4 yesterday, and I am on a quest to have one of those 10-0, 9-1 weeks that just separates us from the pack, and then we're off to the races. Give me Mississippi State plus 9.5. They're hosting Tennessee Saturday, 3:30 game. Big opportunity for Jeff Lebby and the boys. The model loves Mississippi State. I'll talk more about it later in the week. And first time in a long time, which is a good song by Derek Rutten, who is a Canadian country artist back in the 2000s. Some people ask me for music advice, and there you go. First time in a long time, we are not picking at our food. We are not making fun of food. We are not warning people not to lose to food. We are betting on food. Rice, plus 14.5 at Navy. What a time to be alive. I have full circle on Rice. I've come full circle on Rice. Not even immunity. Rice plus 14.5. They are playing good football, inspired football, the kind of football, frankly, that you want to see from food. That's what's being played. So, Mississippi State plus 9.5, Rice plus 14.5. That is our show tonight. I appreciate it. We'll be back Tuesday, and I cannot stress this enough. Don't miss the Tuesday show because it is the biggest prediction show we will have done all year. Week 1 was huge. I think this week is even bigger. And so we may go 2 hours Tuesday night because we'll have the JP poll as well. We could have breaking coaching news. I don't know. Don't miss the Tuesday show. You know what? General rule of thumb, don't miss any show, but especially the Tuesday show. Appreciate you guys so much. Numbers are phenomenal. Just subscribe if you haven't already. That's it and that's all. For Director Bradley, for Producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great start to your week, and God bless.